The concept of Jesus dying for my sins by being nailed to some wood has always mystified me. Okay, he died. I get that much. But how does his death somehow absolve me from my perceived sins? And if he died for mankind, why is there a stipulation attached to this sacrifice? Why is it said that to go unto heaven I must accept Jesus as the Son of God and as my Redeemer? If he died for the sins of all mankind, including mine, shouldn't I be safe whether I believe him or not? Has anyone actually ever seen this contract that was made? Who witnessed it? Did anyone read the fine print? And why don't I remember signing it? Standard Christian theology says that he died for my sins because all human suffering pales in comparison to his suffering. Alright, it's rather dubious logic to claim that Jesus' suffering is somehow connected to my sins, as if he acted as the proverbial scapegoat. But let's go with this logic for a moment just to see where it leads us. This concept implies that Jesus knew he was going to be killed, or sacrificed if you prefer, which leads us to my old friend, Judas. I've always had a soft spot for Judas. If Jesus knew beforehand that he was going to be killed, then he also knew beforehand that Judas was going to arrange it. If he knew that Judas was going to arrange it, then the events must have been predetermined. Yet, Judas is still given the blame by Christians for Jesus' death to this day. If the actions of Judas were predetermined, then how could he be to blame for these actions? Let's just leave aside for a moment the idea that actions being predetermined rather undermines the entire idea of fault, thereby leaving the concept of having to be redeemed for these sins rather moot. Standard Christian theology tells us that Judas resides currently in hell, despite the fact that he actually put into motion the events which we are to believe was the entire point of the life of Jesus. And despite the fact that his actions were probably not under his own control. But consider this. Consider this. Jesus suffered by being thrashed by whips, beaten, made to sport a crown of thorny-like things, and finally nailed to some wood for 3 days. But Judas, good old Judas, actually did the work of Jesus for him. And where did it get him? An eternity in hell. Think about that for a moment. An infinite amount of time, suffering in the burning, blasted wasteland of hell, roasting in rivers of shit, without end, ever. So, who truly died for our sins? Who really did the suffering for mankind? Jesus or Judas? Chew on that.